It's an okay fight. You know, like I said, don't really enjoy watching Lemos, but she's okay. Neil Magny versus Ian Machado. Garry said he'd carry the card, and people seem to be agreeing. I mean, people are hot on him now because he just got a great finish over Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod, and actually won over Kenan Song. But you know, going through this guy's career in the UFC, I remember being hot on him when he finished, who was it, Ackman back in Cage Warriors. But going through this guy's UFC career made me realise that maybe welterweight is actually one of the bad divisions, and we need to cut off the good divisions at lightweight. It's come down. It used to be middleweight, now I'm saying welterweight. In the future, I'll be saying lightweight and lower. But man, the first three guys he fought in the UFC were pretty bad. Jordan Williams, Darian Weeks, Gabe Green. Kenan Song's not great, but he's got some wins. And Daniel Rodriguez is actually okay, but fights really dumb a lot of the time. The intriguing thing is that Kenan Song and Daniel Rodriguez were the first two opponents who couldn't really put Ian Garry to the fence all the time. But they were the first two opponents who didn't try. If you watch the fights with Jordan Williams, Darian Weeks, Gabe Green, Garry runs himself back onto the fence immediately. He's got the Junior Dos Santos problem. But even more so because he's got lateral movement. There's moments in the Gabe Green fight where they're close to one wall, like on Green's left side. And instead of circling out towards the right side where 75% of the cage is, 75% of the open mat is, Garry tries to circle round him between the wall and Green. It's really weird. And he does that a lot. He just puts himself on the fence by accident and has to sort of fight his way off. His direction changes aren't super convincing. He's not very good at faking his way out of there. And when you catch him there, you can hurt him, or you can run in and catch him or clinch him. And in all those fights, it ended up with him getting clinched a lot or taken down. Not a lot of people swinging effectively on him because they weren't very confident doing that. And he has decent enough power and the length and pretty good reactions to shots coming back at him, actually. But there's a lot of moments in these fights where he gets his back to the fence and he just swings back. And that's the last thing you want to be doing, swinging back off the fence. Because that's the position in the cage where you are at the worst position mechanically. If your feet are pushed in, you're level-footed. The guy can duck in on your hips at any time. Your body, your legs, they're all there to hit. You can't retreat. And yeah, Garry's just trying to fight his way out of there. Now, Neil Magny, if he gets near the fence, is going to cuddle you and slowly work you down to your knees and get on your back. I was quite impressed by Garry's defensive wrestling from some of these positions against some of these guys, some of these earlier guys. But, for me, this is sort of like a watershed on whether, or like a litmus test on how washed Neil Magny is. He's pretty washed, but I feel if he just walks towards Ian Garry will put himself in bad positions. If Neil Magny gets head kicked on the way in, that's down to, him being bad. But if Ian Garry, if Neil Magny walks forward and tries to cut the cage for 3 rounds and he doesn't get Garry to that position, I will probably I'll say, yeah, okay, I think there's been some improvement on Ian Garry's footwork. But watching like that Kenan Song fight, Kenan Song comes out to the center of the cage and just stands there and like wants to have a kickboxing match out of range without ever using the fence to his advantage. And that lets Ian Garry go on the front foot and put him to the fence and beat him up a bit, which, Garry did a lot in the Cage Warriors days. But yeah, you could see Neil Magny go back to the fence and then try and duck into Garry's chest and turn him round, to be honest. But I think coming forward and waiting for Garry, or letting Garry run himself onto the fence, is the answer for Neil Magny. And whether he can actually wrestle decently from there is again up in the air, because Garry's decently athletic. He's been working with a good team to improve his cage wrestling. And he looked decent in his first few UFC fights against the cage. But it really shows because he loves the open side counter, sliding back to the left and throw the left hand across the top of the opponent's right. But when he was fighting Jordan Williams was throwing him for a loop just by throwing like jab, right, straight, jab, or right, straight, jab. Ending things with a jab, because Garry's like going back, fading back and waiting for the guy to fall forward behind his right hand. And he did sort of, but then he poked him with the jab on the end of it. And Ian Garry just looked absolutely perplexed. If you keep your shots straight, long, and you stay on position, Ian Garry's not going to have that open side counter nearly as easily. And if you back into the fence, it's gone. He did catch, maybe it was Song, but like stepping out to the side and throwing the right hand, like Chuck Liddell against Randy Couture 2 and 3. But that's a fuck up on the part of the guy who's pushing him towards the fence. The open side counter is a subtle move where you go back, you're mainly going back, but you're going off to the side slightly. Stepping out the side door and throwing the left hand back in at the guy means that he's just bull rushed straight past you. Anyway, yeah, that's actually a pretty decent fight. I was going to write something about Ian Garry and just be like, is he good? Question mark. And end with a feeling of, I don't know.